All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We are live in Kentucky Outdoors Media page. If you can see us right now, go ahead and share this video. We have a lot of people. Gabe and I both have already got messages. We're 2 minutes late. Sorry, I had to make sure the kids were quiet. But go ahead and share this video. Thanks again for being here. If you joined us probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had Colonel Mike Abel. He's the vice chairman of the Kentucky chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And he was on to kind of give the sportsman's perspective of, it was right after the elk draw, sportsman's perspective of just kind of the current status of elk. And now we have Gabe Jenkins here from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and he was the elk coordinator for a while there. I think he said 12 years. I'll let him tell you that. And so, Gabe, we're so happy and appreciative that you've joined us. And go ahead and introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about you.
Cool. I appreciate the opportunity, John, to be on here. It's good to be on here and talk about elk. Like I said, my name is Gabe Jenkins. I'm currently the acting Information and Education Division Director. I've been in this role now for about 6 months, but previously I worked in the deer and elk program for 12 years as a biologist for 6, and then as the deer and elk coordinator for another 6. So I'm still heavily involved in the elk program, just taking a short hiatus, I guess, over the last couple months, helping out in Information and Education Division. So elk, I'm super passionate about. Elk hunter. I like getting out and working with them. Done a lot of different research. Been in the field, been in the office, seen it all. So just glad to talk about things and offer some perspectives on our end about the elk program. That's the beauty of the elk program. We have a lot of passionate and very vested people, and that's great. And we want to be here to provide answers and give out our information the best we can.
Absolutely. Before we get into the questions, when you took over as the elk coordinator or the deer and elk program coordinator, kind of where was the status of the elk herd there? And then what did you see throughout those 12 years?
So for me, I took over as coordinator in 2013. We were really in that transition period from restoration to management. And, you know, we were starting to hunt elk. We'd ramped up pressure. We were looking at some new research, and it was really the culmination of a lot of change at that point. So, you know, for us, when it came in, one of the first few things we did is we wrote an elk management plan. We did not have a plan as an agency. So we put together one of those, trying to think long-term, 15 years out. And it was really neat to see the evolution of the elk program since that point. You know, when I came on in 2007 officially, I know when I was in college, I went to Eastern. I volunteered while I was in college in 2005, 2006, part of some of the early restoration research projects, went to some of the hunts. So I've been around it a long time. I've seen it from where, you know, we were a year or two out from releasing animals, and, you know, they stood out in the open, and we had mining everywhere, to where it's changed now to where they're a lot different. They're a hunted animal. The habitat looks different. The way their behavior is a lot different. The way we think about elk, the way we manage elk is 100% different. So, you know, it's been cool to be involved in that and see that evolution. And I say this a lot. We have a fantastic group of biologists and technicians that work on the elk program, just in the program, but also in the division and within the agency. And, you know, Colonel Abel talked a little bit about it, that, you know, we're not the West. And so we look at what the West does in elk management, but we can't really apply it to the East. It's still managing elk, but, you know, it's a challenge for us. You know, we are pretty much writing the book on Eastern elk management. You know, all of our sister agencies that have elk in the East, I mean, they have such a few number that we really can't compare. So we try things, we see if they work. If they don't, we modify. So, you know, that's one thing about the elk program. There's consistent change in it as we're trying to figure out our way of what does elk in Kentucky look like as the habitat changes, as the numbers change, what our constituents want, what our hunters want. So it's been fun.
Yeah, you know, that's one thing that I hadn't thought of till you just said it is in the eastern United States, we're the only state really that has a herd that's healthy enough to hunt. So you guys really are kind of out there in the forefront. So that's a good point. Let me, I'm going to put up here. So Gabe and I, we had talked before this, and we kind of, has some talking points that we want to make sure, some questions from last time we want to answer. So I'll kind of put those at the bottom. But the first thing that we talked about, we said we want to talk about was, with the elk draw, there were almost 600 permits handed out this year, or names drawn, I guess is a more accurate way to say that. And then, a big question after our talk last time with Colonel Mike and some of the people I talked on Facebook and text messages, one of their concerns was about the handing out of the non-public permits. So I guess like landowners and commissioner tags and things like that. So do you want to hit on that, and then we'll get into this new loyalty program that you guys are going to be talking about too?
Yeah, so I think you did a great job of covering all the different permit types that are out there. I think the point that we really wanted to make sure that we covered was that, we talk a lot about opportunities, and Kentucky, we're blessed to have an elk resource, but where we struggle and where we have a challenge is having public access. And when you look at Eastern Kentucky, specifically in the elk zone, most of all that property in the east, we don't own. We own very, very little. And all of those public areas that you see that are titled wildlife management areas aren't controlled by us. There's some sort of lease agreement that we have with coal companies and landowners and universities, their state forestry. So it's a challenge for us to do anything management wise because we don't own it, but also we have to be creative in how we get public access. And one of the things that we've been very innovative as a state and looked at is our different agreement types that we have. So, a lot of the wildlife management areas, we have a program that's called a landowner access program, where a landowner will enroll 5,000 acres of public hunting opportunity land for all species. And then for every 5,000 acres they enroll, they get one either sex elk tag. And that is a very, very popular program where we have over 100,000 acres enrolled in that. So here we are, elk, that, we get a few elk tags, we get elk hunters, but all the hunters in East Kentucky and all hunters in the state really have that land to access and have to enjoy. So if you want to go grouse hunting or deer hunting or small game hunting, that opportunity is there because of elk. So it's really a win-win. So yeah, we give up one either sex bull tag, but we get 5,000 acres of public access, and that's phenomenal. And so we have to think creatively in how we get public access. The worst thing that I want to do is say, congratulations, John, you've drawn a bull week one tag, and then say, I got nowhere for you to go.
Right.
The only place you can go is private. You're going to have to pay somebody. You're going to have to pay a guide. And that's great, but we can't have that be all of the opportunity that we have. So we have to strike that balance, and that's where we have to come up with these programs. And there's got to be something that we give in order to get. And so we use elk in that frame.
So let me, I think that could be a misconception too, is because these landowners are, essentially donating their land to hunters. It's not just for elk season; it's for all hunting seasons, right?
Right. That's the thing is we actually have four different opportunities that we issue tags. So the general draw is one. And then we have the commission tags that are like the governor's tags. You're familiar with that. But then we have three other opportunities that deal with land and access. So we have the program that I spoke about where they get 5,000 acres enrolled into public hunting. And then we give them an either sex elk tag. Then we have another program that's called the voucher program, and that is specifically for elk. So this is private property that landowners allow us to put elk hunters on their property. And for every elk that's harvested on that property, they get a point. And once that landowner accrues 10 points, so the harvest of 10 elk, that landowner then gets an elk tag to be used on their property. So this is one that's specifically for elk. And then we have another opportunity. It's called an elk restoration permit. And that was designed for if we were capturing elk and moving elk around, that, they would allow us to come in and capture some of those. So it's on the point system as well. So for every elk that we capture and take off, they get 1 point. And then when we catch a total of 10 elk, they get an either sex elk tag to be used on their property the next year.
Gotcha.
So that one's not been used much. The most common is this landowner program and then the voucher program.
So another thing I want to touch on, I've heard people say, well, this person, so and so's cousin he kills an elk every year. Or this
Yeah,
business owner, those landowners, some of them are selling those tags. Is that correct? And
yeah,
so you do have some of the same people who are hunting every year, but that's permissible.
absolutely. I mean, those are their tags. They can do with them what they please. Some of them they sell, some of them they give to their employees, some of them they keep, they give to their family. When you see, for the most part, when you see elk hunting on the Outdoor Channel, on the Sportsman's Channel, and it's the big name, that's how they got here, is they bought one of those tags or they
Right.
were given to come in and showcase. So, there's lots of people that buy them year after year after year, and there's a lot of misconceptions about that. They see that, and I understand it. They see people on TV on the Outdoor Channel hunting elk. They want an opportunity to go, and it's a lack of understanding and knowledge, and that's why we're here to talk about those things. Just try to provide the best information
Absolutely.
we can. So, but yeah,
And that's one thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's all. That's it.
That's one thing too that some people have mentioned, and I mean this with no disrespect towards you, but they're like, well, you're not going to learn anything. They're just going to sugarcoat everything, and so my side of this is, I gave, Colonel Mike did a fantastic job. Everybody liked that. That was kind of the sportsman's perspective. We need the department to come on and give their perspective, because in the end, we're all in it together, right?
Right.
We all got to work together here. So everyone needs to be able to voice their opinion, facts, research, and so on.
Well, and I'll get on my soapbox a little bit. As we as sportsmen, we like to fight amongst ourselves, and shame on us. We need to rally around the big things when we have the big things, and not squabble over the silly little things. So, we think about, we should use this weapon or that weapon, or hunt them this many days or that many days. And in the big scheme of things, man, we need to be thinking about recruitment, retention, getting more hunters out there, carrying on the tradition of what we have, and managing the resource correctly, all those things that are so important to what we do and what we enjoy as avid outdoor sportsmen and sportswomen. So that's where it's at, not the infighting amongst ourselves. And deer and elk hunters, we're really bad about that, unfortunately.
We all have opinions, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move into the loyalty program. On the next commission meeting, you guys have on the agenda to discuss this program. I know some people have mentioned a point system. Some people, have had opinions on the elk draw, and this is kind of there in the middle. I think the way we talk, maybe I'm wrong on that, but could you kind of explain the framework of the loyalty program and what you guys have discussed so far? I know that's subject to change, but
Correct. So this will be up for discussion at our commission meeting. That next meeting's Friday, June the 26th. Yes, June the 26th. So basically the concept is that, we have an X number of tags that aren't used, whether it's the hunter can't go, they don't purchase it, there's, an issue in the family. We have a set number that, we might issue 600, but 50 to 75 won't get picked up. So what do you do with those tags? And so we've been trying to look at how do you reissue them? Mike was talking about, well, reissue those, sell them. And a lot of the states have a secondary draw where they reissue them. So, that's kind of where we started on that thought process. But then we also have this segment of the elk draw is rigged. I never get drawn. I've been applying for 20 years and I've never had a chance. And, we don't want to change the system that we have as far as what's in place. But what we would love to do, if there's an opportunity, is to reward the folks that have been with us for the long haul and never been drawn. So we started looking at, how many people are out there. I mean, we've hunted elk now for 20 years, and how many people have applied faithfully for all 20 years and never been drawn.
Yeah.
And actually that number is, let me see here, I got it here in my notes. 82 as of right now.
Wow.
So 82 people have applied this whole time and never had the opportunity to hunt.
It's probably a lot less than people think.
Yeah, it is. And, we all think, yeah, I've applied every year, but you miss a year every once in a while. Yeah. But, so it's out there. It's 82. We've looked at it multiple times. So the concept that we have is that those leftover tags that aren't purchased, that aren't going to be used, we take those and then we issue those to those groups of people that have applied every year and never been drawn. So we would start with that group. So if you're in that 82 and there's 20 tags, we'll issue 20 of them, and then there'll be 62 people left over. And through time, we'll work through that entire group that you're going to get an elk tag. And then once we get everybody in that group, then we'll move to the next group, meaning everybody who's applied every year but 1 year, and we'll work backwards. So it's really thanking our constituents for their loyalty, staying with the program, staying with us, but also trying to find a way to get more hunters in the field. We're comfortable with those tag numbers that we're issuing, so what that looks like. So that's basically the concept. What they come out with it and open for discussion. What I'll say for the folks that are out there watching and listening is take a look at that. That agenda's on our website. Reach out to your commissioners. You can get on our website, find my county contact. It'll tell you your commissioner. You can reach out to him, speak to him, tell him what you think.
Up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So I think what you said was, take note of that. Next commission meeting, reach out to your coordinators, your district. I'm not sure if you call them coordinators, but your leadership there in your district, and let them know what you think, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they're there for. They're going to be this will be up for a vote. So I encourage everybody to reach out to your commissioner, tell them what you think about it, if you support the concept or any recommendations you have on it. Yeah. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a good thing.
Do you guys have an approximate number that you think those are going to be available per year, or is that kind of year by year thing?
It's pretty consistent. We have 5 to 10 bull firearms tags that don't really get picked up for a reason or two, and then you have the either sex archery and cow firearms. So, I don't know. This will be new from where we have a lot of people who intend to go who just at the last second don't, and right. Unfortunately, we have some people that know they can't go for a variety of reasons. So it'll be, we'll see. It could be 5 or 10, it could be 50 or 75. I don't know. But the good thing about it is that those folks, if you're in that cohort, if you just hang on, you're for sure going to get one.
So here's a kind of a success story here. Gary Turner says, I've applied every year but 1 year, but he got an either sex tag this year.
Nice.
Not only is that great, but what that means for Gary is he's not going to be in that program, that loyalty program.
Not going to be in that program. Yeah, he's going to get to go hunting this year. So fantastic.
Yeah, congratulations, Gary. So, so let me say real quick, if you're watching this, if you know someone like Gary who has an elk tag who was drawn, make sure you tag them in this. Share it to their wall. We want them to see this. This next question we're going to get into is about the status of the elk. I know, I think the last number came out was a little over 13,000. Yep. That was, I guess, 2 years ago now that it's 2020. Kind of speak to that, just overall status of the elk herd. We said health, the outlook, everything, and then you can mention that the UK study that's coming up as well, or that we're in.
Absolutely. So yeah, you're correct. As far as our population estimate, the one thing I can for sure say is our population's strong, it's healthy, it's in great shape. But I will admit that things look a lot different. They behave different, they act different, their response to pressure is different, everything is different. And that was kind of goes back to my comment earlier when I took over as coordinator. We were going from restoration to management. And so you see this huge flux. And I hear a lot of people talk about what's similar to the turkeys. You think about, for you guys that are a little bit more longer in the tooth, that it was, when we were releasing turkeys, they were really easy to kill. You saw them everywhere, and then they kind of vanished, and then it became hard. And it's the same concept, is that, our elk respond great to pressure, and they live a long time, and we don't give them credit. Mike talked about that they're smart, and he referenced a study in Ontario where a 10-year-old elk is virtually impossible to kill. Well, when you look at our status and our age structure of our harvested animals, it's nothing for us to kill a 20-year-old cow every year. So they live a long time. And so, that cow, she remembers, she knows where she can go, where she's safe. And so that definitely has changed things. We know that has changed their behavior, but also our habitat has changed a ton. And where we really need to focus and talk a lot about is we have to make large scale habitat change. When we thought about elk and bringing back elk in Kentucky in the 90s, we were putting them on active mine ground, active, strip mining, where they were making a ton of early, succession grass. You're familiar with it from being from Harlan. Yeah. And that's all changed. And that industry is dried up. We don't know if it'll come back, but they're not making new habitat every year. I mean, we were getting thousands of acres of habitat, early perfect elk habitat, and now it's not. And that stuff grows up really quickly. It's woody, it's shrubby, so visibility is down. So with all that, it's harder to see them. And then second of all, we lost a lot of those safe haven refuge areas. When you think about a lot of those mines, they were behind a lock gate, lock key, active guards, people everywhere. Just nobody was up there bothering them. And now that doesn't exist. So they're really going to respond to that pressure. And an elk, they don't know the difference between a hunter and an ATV rider and a rabbit hunter. Pressure is pressure. So they're going to respond to that. And so they're going to go somewhere where they're not bothered. And we see that in our research where these elk will go to places that nobody can get to them, and they stay there. And they stay there for, until they're bothered, really. So it's definitely changed. But to us, every piece of data that we have that we've collected through time, there's nothing that tells me that the population's in trouble, that it's declining. I mean, it's solid. Yeah, our success rate is declining, and that's what we kind of expect. We still see some of the highest success rates in the country. So, it's not killing, it's hunting. So we expect that some people are going to go and not have success, and it's about the experience. Yeah, we'd love for everybody to take home an elk, but that's not the reality. Is that people, and even in the deer woods, we don't even have that high success rate, and we don't estimate that high of a success on whitetail. So why do we expect that for elk? And so things change, and that goes back to our expectations, what our hunters want, and what that looks like. So that's kind of where we're at with things.
So let me, before we go on to the next question, and let me backtrack for a second because I forgot to ask you this. If someone is drawn, and we talked about this before we came on, someone is drawn for the loyalty program, they're one of those 82, and they are not able to go that year. Have you guys discussed what that will look like? Will they be recycled to the list the next year? How will that work?
We've had those discussions. I'm not sure where they're actually finalized on the official proposal on that. If it's going to be a one-time only chance, or if you've got the abilities to deny it for once or twice. But yes, it's something we've looked at. Where they are with it, I'm not 100% sure, but definitely that's something we've considered, because life happens, and you'd hate to be that one. You finally get your chance, and you've got to have surgery, or family members getting married or something like that you can't get out of. So we appreciate that, we acknowledge that, and we'll try to do the best we can to accommodate those things.
Gotcha. And one more thing about that, someone just asked, what is the exclusion time frame for someone who is drawn? How long do they sit out before they are eligible again?
Yeah, I got that. Saw that Andy there was asking. That's a good question. So if you're drawn in the general draw, it's a 3-year sit out. So if you're for either sex archery or cow firearm, bull firearm, you've got to wait 3 years.
Gotcha. All right. Moving along here, I think this is one that any criticism that people have had, it's usually been centered around this next question, which involves relocating of elk. I know people have mentioned what I know it's like the Boone Center. I call it the bridge to nowhere. That's what we always called it in Harlan. Yep. That bridge has been there for years. They've mentioned that, or helping other states get their herd started. I guess we're a little selfish. We want to keep all the elk to ourselves, but I know it's important to work with other states. So kind of talk about the relocation and, how it's benefiting everyone.
Right. So we've moved elk in some form of fashion for 10 years now. And I'll go right through all the numbers. We started in 2010 and then finished up in 2019. In some sort of elk movement at that point. Through that period, we've moved 322 elk to 3 other states. So those states would be the state of Missouri, the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Virginia. Those were spread out over about a 3 to 6 year time frame. So for a total of 322. Also during that time, we've moved 313 elk within the state. So we've set up populations we've set up elk herds where there weren't elk before. Some examples of that would be in Pike County around Fish Trap Wildlife Management Area. That whole kind of eastern corner of Pike County, it didn't have hardly any elk, if any at all. So we moved some animals up there, protected them, letting that population grow. A very similar place that it was the first thing we did in 2010 is we started moving elk to Middlesboro. I know that whole section over there, there was no elk there, and so we moved elk over there. Same thing. We established that population, protected them, and now there's a thriving population that we have hunters in there hunting. And then also the last place that we talked about is that Bridge to Nowhere, the Boone Ridge Education Center that's going to go in. We moved animals there, and the glory of that, there's multiple benefits. It moves our elk herd across the elk zone. We get better distribution, and those animals move. I mean, we've had multiple hunters harvest all of those elk directly on the places we released them, and then other areas that are surrounding it, so they just don't get put out and stay there. They move, and that's the good thing. And we want to try to do that as much as we can to try to put elk all across the elk zone. I mean, it's pretty for us, it's everybody wants more elk. We want more elk. We want them to be better distributed across the landscape. That equals more hunting opportunities. So we're all in agreement on what the long-term projection looks like.
So now on the, relocating to the 3 states, Missouri, Wisconsin, Virginia, has that been something where they have given us something in return for that, or are we just trying to help them get started?
Good question. So, for a lot of us in our lifetime, we didn't really know this or see this, but this is how state agencies work. I mean, this is how we restored white-tailed deer. This is how we restored turkeys and river otter, as we traded back and forth and did swaps with other states. And we're the recipient of it as well. As we brought in 1,541 elk from our western states, and they gave them to us for free as a pay it forward mentality. And so we wanted to make sure that we did the same thing. And especially in the states, at least in Virginia for that matter, is that those are our elk too. I mean, they just went right across the border, and that's the cool thing that, in my lifetime and my kids' lifetime, we're going to think about elk populations on a multi-state level with now elk in West Virginia, and Tennessee. We're all got them. So it's really going to be really cool to see what it does in our lifetime as far as elk numbers. So, we did that on the good graces, but it was also with Missouri and with Virginia, is they then provided some things that we needed, and that was fish. Let me get my stuff right. So Missouri gave us crappie, and those went into Kentucky Lake. And then Virginia gave us trout that went all across the state. And then Wisconsin actually paid us. So part of our agency's initiative right now is grouse restoration, grouse habitat. And so the seed money that we receive from Wisconsin is going to go into habitat management in the east. Specifically for grouse, the cool thing is what you do for grouse is great for deer and great for elk. So it's a win-win for all of that. So that's going to help our grouse program and our grouse hunters, but there'll be all other species that benefit from it.
Good deal. That's good to hear. All right. So where we went next was kind of what are the next steps? Hunting opportunities, more research. What are the next steps to keep this thing going and keep it healthy and keep it strong and provide more opportunities for sportsmen and women?
Right. So we've kind of hit on some of that is, getting elk spread across the zone more, try to get the population growing. We've been very consistent on our elk numbers. One of the things that we've asked for is, can we please just keep things consistent through time? We work a lot off of trend data. And so when you change things and you modify things in the middle of it, it's hard for us to come up with trends. So we've asked for consistency. We've asked to keep the tag numbers the same. That way we can see what kind of changes there are. We realize that some of the data that we use needs to be updated. We've kind of referred to that already. We have a big multi-state project or effort with University of Kentucky on a research project. So we're looking at our cows and our calves and the survival of all of those, trying to see what has changed in 20 years as far as our reproduction rates and success rates and survival rates of all of the cows. So the important metrics in how we estimate the population. So that's going on. We always have to think about disease. We have that brainworm that we think about. We also think about and have a lot of concern with chronic wasting disease. Disease is something that most of us biologists, that's what we are focused on right now is because there's so many new novel things. I mean, heck, we're all living it right now. I mean, that's why we're doing this virtually, is because of the disease. So, I mean, it's really the same thing. There's so many different things that are coming in that our elk are exposed to. We need to make sure that we stay on that. And that requires us to put hands on animals, to collect samples, and do the very best that we can. As the elk program, but I think the important thing is to not forget is that we are the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So all the species in this state are just as important to us. Yeah, I'm passionate about elk, and that's my job, but we need to care about the bass, and we've got Asian carp, we have whitetail, we've got bats, we've got all kinds of things. So whitetail is just a small part. Well, I'm sorry, whitetail, but elk is just a small thing about what we do. Yeah, it's cool, and they're big and they're charismatic, but they're one species in the state, and we're very blessed to have a ton of opportunity. So we don't want to lose sight in that.
Absolutely. So we've had a few comments here I want to get to. I think this is Hurley Combs. This is a great question. Out of those 82, if they just apply for one tag, like if they just apply for bull firearm, is that enough for the 82? Do they have to apply for all? What's the criteria there?
Good question. I don't know really the answer to that. I think that's open for discussion at this point, really. So what I'd encourage him and everybody is to look at that, make your recommendations to your commissioner. That's the thing. When we bring things to them, that it's open for discussion. And, I can see positives and negatives to all of that. What makes the most sense? For me as a biologist, I got to be careful. I'm kind of outside my realm now. I think about reproduction and biology, and we bring in a little bit of human dimensions, but this is social. This is what do our hunters want? And this is where the commission comes in, and we can do surveys and ask people and their opinions on it. But that's the side of it.
Yeah, and that was a good question. I hadn't thought of that, because you have some people have applied for all of it for every year, I guess. So and then here, so black bear sightings, South Central Kentucky. I think someone just said there was one in Lexington. Where my in-laws live in Harlan, they will literally walk down the road in front of the house. And you just kind of, watch them go, and they go about their way. How far do elk migrate? Are we ever going to see an elk in Lexington? And also, let me add to that, black bear effect on elk. That's something that people keep asking. So two questions there.
Yep. So let's touch on the black bears and elk right now. So we know that our bear population's growing. We've seen that, and that's part of this research project that we're doing, is that we want to see if they're even eating elk calves. I mean, opportunistically, it makes sense. There's tons of research out there all across the country saying, they make an impact. No, they don't make an impact. Depends on the habitat. So there's lots of questions that we have. And we'll see. Time will tell on this research project. I can say so far we've not had any mortalities on that side of things. So, my personal opinion, does a bear stumble across an elk calf every once in a while? Yeah, but do they systematically grid search and look for them like they do in the Smokies? I mean, our habitat's so much different. So we'll see. That's the glory of research. I'm not going in biased one way or the other, and but we'll adjust to it accordingly based off of what we see. So that's what we're doing on bears. As far as elk migrations and elk movement, it really depends on the critter. We don't see these big, 50, 100-mile movements like they do in the West, because they don't have to. They can be lazy here. They've got food, water, shelter, and they're like we talked about before, when they find it, they're staying there. So where we see a lot of our movements are yearling dispersals. So a 1-year-old bull or 1-year-old cow kind of makes these forays to look for places to kind of establish as their new territory, and then during the rut. The bulls can move miles, 10, 15 miles in 24-hour period. That's a pretty common period where we see movements. And then also we see a period right after they drop their antlers, so February, March, that they'll kind of make this shift in movements as well. So, they move, but not like what you think out west. Do we want them in Lexington? Absolutely not. I don't. We really want them to stay in the 16-county zone. When we talk about movements and spreading across the zone, I'm talking about the elk zone only. We really want them to stay there. that's where, in that elk zone, very little agriculture, not a lot of roads. And you get outside of that, you're dealing with ag and a high population, and it's not cool. Seeing an elk along the interstate or in your backyard, they're not like whitetail. They bring a bunch of their buddies, and they're more like cattle. Yeah. So they can cause a problem pretty quickly.
About maybe 15 years ago, I remember there was one. I think my wife actually saw it. Got hit by a coal truck near Cumberland in Harlan, and man, you don't want those things. First of all, if it hadn't been a coal truck, who knows the damage it would have done. Yep. And then the elk is like, it suffered and died, and so you don't want those things near any roadways, anything where there's traffic, and that's going to be a problem. So I see some people bragging on you there. Your commissioner says you're a world-class talent biologist. I'm so glad you're here. And then Tina Thornsberry. Let me say something about Tina Thornsberry. She did an article with us in this month's issue of the magazine about an elk, basically an elk hunting prep guide. When I talked to people and asked who do I need to talk to, her name came up over and over. So I appreciate her. And when I talked to her, she said a lot of great things about you too. So
I know I'm tickled to see him logging on and watching. I've worked with all these folks my entire career and got nothing but good things to say about them as well. And I appreciate what they do. They provide a fantastic opportunity and resource. And, I'm glad we're partners in all this. We all want the same thing, and just tickled that they're on here and working with us.
Absolutely. So, we're wrapping up here. Let me ask you, they just had, and this may not be something you comment on as far as I'm sure you know a lot more about than I do, but we just had the passing of the Great American Outdoors Act.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the state of Kentucky goes, do you know specifically how we've benefited from that? I put some things in the magazine about it. Ben Bishop, who is with BHA, he wrote an article about it. But can you speak to that at all?
Not really. No, not without myself in trouble. I've been watching it, but what it's going to do with us here specifically in Kentucky, I'm not well versed enough to say one way or the other. But I do know that it's a win for sportsmen and women across the country. We will benefit for that, and that's the great thing about some of the things that we've seen is that we're seeing some things change as far as opportunities for hunting in this administration, and that's fantastic. And there's some more great things to come. There's a lot of opportunities for funding. Mike talked about this, but we desperately need funding. We're charged with managing so many different resources, all of our non-game species that are so underfunded, and just we need all the help we can get in that. And that's where it comes from, is this federal funding to help us do the great things that we can do.
Absolutely. Another question come in that I have no idea about, so I'm going to give it to you. The elk rut, is it consistent from year to year, the time frame, I guess, as far as how long that lasts?
Yeah, so for us, we're usually around the last week in September, first week in October. So right there when our season is going on. Where we do see some variation in that is just weather. Weather can really pay some huge consequences for us during our hunt. When you think about last year, during that period, it was hot and it was dry. And every day during that first season in October, we had highs over 95. Mm-hmm. And when you're a 1,000-pound animal with big, thick fur, you're not going to move during the day. And, that was just unfortunate timing with the weather. We can't play that. It is what it is. So what happens at that point is they're just not going to move much during the day. The rut's going to continue. It's just going to be mostly at night. And that's when it's cooler. They're going to be out and doing their thing then. There's one question, if you don't mind, John, that I'd kind of like to hit. Looks like Dustin asked about the elk viewing station at Paul Van Boeven.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll touch on that. So we have 2 elk areas that we have designated as elk viewing areas. So one is in Pike County called Fish Trap WMA, and then also Paul Van Boeven in Breathitt County. What we wanted to do, and part of our plan in the 2030 elk management plan, is provide places for people to also go see elk. So there's a balance between hunting and viewing and what can we do and what we can't do. And so we wanted to look at places that we had access, that we had control, and we would also not impact hunting opportunities. So the first was was Fish Trap WMA. That WMA had never been open to elk hunting before. We'd moved elk up there, and we just had protected them, but it never opened. So it made sense for us to go ahead and close off the management area, let it be really a place that people can go see elk, but also be a source population for elk spilling off into the future. So that's Fish Trap. Paul Van Boeven is a little bit different in that that property is actually owned by the University of Kentucky. Part of that agreement that we have is they want to have a viewing station. They want to have education go on there. So they really wanted us to do more as far as viewing goes. The habitat had really grown up there. So to us, the habitat had grown up, and then there had been very little harvest of elk on the property. So it was one that we had kind of a nice marriage where the landowner wanted it. There wasn't a lot of hunting opportunity there for elk already. We had a need. We already had a place that was already a viewing area. So it made sense for us to go ahead and designate that and then do some habitat work. And really what we want to do is do some habitat work there, make that a great place, and then open up some opportunity there for hunting in the future.
Awesome. I wasn't aware of that.
Yep.
The viewing stage. So when you say do some work on the habitat, what kind of work are you doing?
So for us, we've got to get out the woody material. So we're dealing with autumn olive, that kind of shrubby, brushy stuff that comes in, that comes back. So elk need grass. And what we're dealing with is all this woody material coming in. So early, like black locust, cerisa would be a plant that we're dealing with. And then autumn olive, all things that aren't really desirable for elk. So what we are trying to do is knock that woody material back and get more grass. And we have to think about things on a large landscape. What we need from our landowners and our elk guides and the places that we have permission is we need to be doing habitat work. Just like we think about on whitetail, we put in those food plots for whitetail. We need to be doing the same thing at an even bigger scale for elk, because we're losing that habitat. It goes back to our discussion on the mining. The dozer was creating that for us. The dozer's gone. So now we have to find ways to do that, whether that's through manipulation with equipment or with fire or with herbicide, things that we can kill that woody material and provide more grass.
Gotcha. So I mean, that's not an easy job either. And it takes a lot of work.
It does, and it sounds great. Yeah, let's do that. But it takes power, manpower, and money and resources, and it can be done. It's just it requires all of us to pitch in to do that.
Yeah. CWD, you kind of hit on that. No cases of elk or deer in Kentucky, correct?
Nope. We look at it. We work very hard as an agency to look at that and try to be as efficient as we can, but we've not detected it in the state. We do have it close. It's within 60 miles of our border in West Kentucky, there in Tennessee and Missouri. So it's kind of knocking on our doorsteps. You've seen a lot of proactive measures the agency has done to restrict movements, to restrict importations, trying to do everything we can to keep it at bay as long as we possibly can. Is what we're trying to do.
Gotcha. So, well, we've answered all of our questions. We've answered the questions I think that I've seen there, unless you've seen another one. Just some final thoughts on elk in Kentucky. Anything else you're wanting to add in there or let everyone know about?
Yeah, I think, part of this is for our hunters who are drawing a tag, be thinking about those things. You have until July the 3rd to get in your preferences for your units. So, be thinking about that. Reach out to some folks. You can call any of the elk guides. You can reach out to previous hunters. You can call us and talk to us. Any things that you can do to help better yourself, to be informed on where you should apply, what that looks like. When people call me, the first question I always ask them is, what are you thinking as far as a guide or not a guide? And if you're thinking about a guide, I'd recommend you reach out to them now. Not all of them work in multiple places, so they're going to tell you where to apply. If you're thinking about doing it yourself, we can work on that. So, lots of things to think about. We have a lot of great resources on our webpage that's all built into their profile, where they find out where they were drawn. Look at all that. We try to provide everything that we can. Most of the stuff that I will say is also in print, and a lot of it is in video form there. So a lot of opportunity electronically to look at that. And then by all means, get in the truck and go down and spend some time in East Kentucky. Figure out what you're getting ready to get into.
Yeah. if you haven't been, if you have an elk tag, if you haven't been to Eastern Kentucky, you know, one thing that Tina and I talked about, you're going to have to be in pretty good shape
Yeah.
to go elk hunting. If you've not been up those mountains, man, I mean, some of it is treacherous. So taking a drive out there would be a good idea.
That's two things that I hear a lot is, man, these mountains are bigger than what I thought they are. And those elk aren't just big deer. I mean, a lot of people think, you know, this is big deer hunting. No, go look at that horse that you've got out in the backyard. And that's what you're dealing with when you get it on the landscape. So that, and you know, the mountains aren't 10,000, 15,000 feet high, but they're really steep. And you better be ready, be prepared. And, you know, the seasons are pretty short. So, you know, get in shape, get out there, get moving, be prepared. And the more effort you put into it, the better your chances of success.
Yeah, so Tina said here, the Kentucky Elk Guide Association is always here. That's a great place to start. That's what I was actually going to say before she said that. You can find them on Facebook. Just search on Facebook, Kentucky Elk Guide Association. And I know there's some great people there and have done some good work. So anything else before we go?
I think that's pretty much all the stuff that I had. You know, I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. And
yeah. And Commissioner Storm said they're glad to help too. So you guys are glad to help, and I know that. Well, Gabe, I appreciate you, man. You know, we've been trying to get this together for a while, and I'm glad we finally got it worked out. I hope. Well, I don't hope. I know that there's a lot of people that's watched today that's gotten some information, had some questions answered they didn't know the answers to.
Mm-hmm.
Next commission meeting is when?
June the 26th.
26th. So if you watched here, you're watching the replay. Loyalty program will be discussed there. You can tune in and watch that. You can watch that through, I guess it's on a Zoom call, right?
Yeah, you can actually watch through our YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
So it's streamed live, so you can watch and participate. They'll have directions on if you'd like to comment on a discussion item, how you can do that. So yeah, we're all trying to figure out how to deal with life now with all virtual things. Yeah. So it's different, but you know, we do the best we can to make sure that we offer that opportunity.
Yeah, I watched the last one. It was great. I mean, it was you could hear everybody, see everybody, and yeah, I think I was working outside, so I eventually put my phone in my pocket and listened to it as I was working. So very easily accessible. So, Gabe, again, I appreciate you, man. Hopefully, maybe right before or maybe right after elk season, you can come back on and we can kind of talk how things went. And really look forward to working with you and anyone else in the department. I know I talked to a guy about bear hunting, John
Hast. Yep.
Hast, yeah. And so we're going to talk some more about some black bear hunting opportunities soon. So
cool.
Hey, man, had a great time. If you are watching this, if you're watching the replay, please make sure you like it, you share it. Want to plug again our conversation with Tina Thornsberry with the Beaver Creek Elk Outfitters. Kentucky, if you have a tag, check that out. It's Kentucky or Elk Hunting Prep Guide. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon.
See you, John.
See you, bud.